Hello and welcome to the order flow sequence tracker. This is video number 9, and this is the reversal alert function in the order flow sequence tracker. Now the reversal alert has 3 conditions. So we're going to talk about each condition. Condition 1 is sequential decline. And what I want you to remember about sequential decline is 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're going to show you how to spot sequential declines and why they're useful. Condition 2 is the COT position. So in order to get an alert, you have to have condition 1 and condition 2 both true. Otherwise, you're not going to get a reversal alert. And condition number 3 is a little bit different. It has specific rules, and you can choose from 4 different rules. And if you have the rules turned off, then only condition 1 and condition 2 have to be true to get a reversal alert. But if you have one of the rules activated, then all 3 conditions must be true before you can get an alert. And the last and final thing is we're going to talk about real-time versus on-bar close. This indicator has the ability to function in either mode, and we're going to talk about the differences of those. So first we're going to talk about the reversal alert short signals. Okay, so the first condition here we're looking for is falling buying pressure, which is a reduction in aggressive buyers. Remember that aggressive buyers show up on the ask or the offer side. That's where we can see what the aggressive buyers are doing is on the offer side. So we are going to look for a sequential decline on the ask/offer prior to taking a short. And here's a stack. First thing you want to notice here is this is the definition of a sequential decline. Notice you have an 813, 684, and 61. Remember my 3, 2, 1 analogy on the sequential decline? That's exactly what we have here. We have a large number, a less number, and a lesser number. So it sequentially declines, and we are specifically looking for this sequential decline to happen at the very top of a green bar for a short signal. Okay, so we are always going to be looking at the top on the ask side. Remember what's happening right here. These are aggressive buyers who are hitting the offer, and there's less of them each price level. As we go up, there's less of them, so we have falling buying pressure. Okay, so this sequential decline is the first clue or the first condition towards getting a reversal alert. Now here's another example. And what's here? Right here we have sequential decline, 1496, 657, 137. Okay, so it's sequentially declining at each price level as we go up. And again, this is a green bar, which is an up bar, and we're definitely looking for a sequential decline for a short signal off of the offer. So those are examples of sequential decline, and remember that this is condition 1, is sequential decline. Now for a long signal, we're looking at the absolute opposite of this. So we're looking for falling selling pressure, which would be a reduction in aggressive sellers. So when we're looking for aggressive sellers on the stack, where are they? Well, they're on the bid side because aggressive sellers hit the bid. Okay, so we're looking for a sequential decline on the bid for a long signal. All right, so here's an example. So where would we be looking for a sequential decline if we're looking for a long signal? Well, we'd be looking on the bid side and at the bottom of the candle. So again, we have sequential decline 7, 16, 304, and 27. So this is a sequential decline for a long signal, and it's going to be at the bottom of the candle, and it's telling us that there are 716 aggressive sellers, 304 aggressive sellers, and 28 aggressive sellers. So the selling pressure is drying up or falling, and that is usually a good sign to see a potential reversal. So we're looking for a long reversal alert. So here's another example. Where would we be looking for the sequential decline for a long signal? down here at the bottom. Okay, so that's exactly where we're looking. 1044, 546, 39. The idea behind this sequence is that you're getting falling selling pressure. The sellers are drying up. And when there's no more sellers, what's going to happen? Well, most likely, you're going to get a reversal. So we've got sequential decline. And remember again, the sequential decline is condition 1. So there's two different types of sequential decline. There is a long and a short version of sequential decline. So now we're going to move over to condition number 2. Remember, for a reversal alert short signal, we're going to talk about COT position, because the COT position is actually condition number 2. And for a short signal, we want the COT position to be in the upper half of the bar. Now, why do we want to see that? Remember, the COT position is the position where the most volume goes off in a particular bar. And that shows us that there is responsive selling, and we want to take advantage of that. So let's take a look at another stack. All right, so here is this is for a short signal. Remember that a short signal is always going to be, or not maybe always, but most of the time for a reversal is going to be on a green bar. And where's the COT? Well, the COT is the gray area here. Okay, so is this gray area in the upper half of the candle? So yes, it is. Here's about halfway, and this is definitely in the upper half. So that is condition 2. So remember that condition 1 has to also be true before we can move on to condition 2. Here's another example of another stack. Where's the COT? Well, the COT is down here at the very bottom. Okay, so the COT is not in the upper half. So in this case, condition 2 would be false. So for the reversal alert for a long signal, the COT position is going to have to be in the lower half of the bar, which again is also condition 2. Condition 2 is the COT position. This is going to show us responsive buying. We want to take advantage of that. So here's a stack. So where is the COT? Well, the COT is in the upper half, and that is in the wrong position. We want the COT to be in the lower half in order to generate a long signal. So the COT is not in the lower half. This is an example of a false signal. Now here's another stack, and again, this is where we're looking for, we've got a down bar, we're looking for a reversal to the upside for a long signal. And what do we have here? We have sequential decline right here, and we have the COT in the lower half of the bar. And this will meet condition 2 and make it true. So we've got 2 of our conditions are true. We have sequential decline and the COT in the lower half. So condition 1 and condition 2 are true. So now we need to discuss condition 3. Condition 3 is the rules, and I'm going to try to go over each specific rule in just a second. First, I want to show you what these sequential declines as well as the COTs look like on a chart. So here's just a basic chart, right? And we're looking for sequential decline. So there's a sequential decline right there. Okay, this one is actually 4 levels. Okay, now remember that a 4 level, we want to have at least 3 levels of sequential decline. That would be the minimum of that condition. But sometimes we have 4 or even 5. And you can actually set this as a parameter. Do you want only 3? Do you want 4 and above? Do you want 5? You can set those. Well, you can just glance at these and you can see there's a 5 right there. There is a 5. You can see there's sequential declines all over the place on this particular chart. Now, let's talk about the COT. Where's the COT? Is the COT for a short signal? We have an up bar, we have sequential decline, and is the COT in the upper half bar? Yes, it is. And there's another example of sequential decline and the COT being in the upper half of the bar. Here's an example of where we had sequential decline looking for a long trade, and the COT was in the lower half. And there's another example. Now this one would have been an excellent signal. Now just because you have condition 1 and condition 2 may be true, that does not necessarily mean you need to be taking that trade. Remember, there's a condition 3, as well as there are other things that are going to affect whether or not you take this trade. But we're definitely skewing our edge to be positive and in our favor by knowing what's going on with the sequential decline and the COT as conditions to a potential entry. So I want you to see exactly what a signal looks like. So this is what the signal looks like. So if you have the conditions number 3 turned off, which is the rules. If it's off, so you have no rules, then all you need is condition 1 and condition 2 to be true, and then a signal will show up. So this is the way I have it set. So first I want to look at what the signal looks like. Well, this is a short signal. It's this particular color, and it actually shows you the sequential decline inside the signal. And in this case, I've got it set to 3 levels. So it's showing me that there are 3 levels of sequential decline. Okay. To get a signal, I also know that the COT must be in the upper half. Otherwise, I would not get the signal. But you can see here in this example, you've got sequential decline and you have the COT in the upper bar right there. So there's the COT right there. Now, you can also set this. This is a variable that we can set. I'll show you how to set that here in just a few minutes. But here is the exact, another chart, same chart, but it's been set for 4 signals, 4 levels. So whenever you have 4 levels, the signal itself is automatically going to be adjusted to show you that there are 4 levels. Okay, so in this case, we set it to 4 levels. Yes, we had 4 levels, and the COT is in the upper half of the bar. So condition 1 was true, condition 2 was true, and I get a signal. Okay, I've got NinjaTrader up, and what I want to do is we want to talk about the parameters here before we actually go into condition number 3, which is the actual rules. So the reversal alert here has this parameter enabled. You say true or false. So if we want to turn the signals off, we would say false here. And you'll see that as soon as I do that, the signals are gone. Okay, so we definitely would like to see the signals, so we're going to turn that back on. And there's the signals back. The long color for a long trade is a blue. We can obviously customize this by hitting the pull down, highlighting, hitting the pull down, and changing the color. If you would like to do that, you're welcome to do that. The long COT position, okay, so this is the position for the COT. Where does it need to be? Well, it needs to be in the lower half of the bar. So you could put a 50 in here, it'd be the lower 50%. Or you can go even more stringent. So we can specify a percentage here. Obviously, you want it to be less than 50%, 50% or less, let's say that. And I'll have it here at 40%. That's just my particular preference. You can set this at any place you want, but I would recommend a value of 50 or less here. So that means that we're looking for a COT position in the lower half of the bar. And that is exactly what we need to be looking for. For a long sequence, for a sequence decline, we're looking for at least 3 levels. This is where you would change that. So you can have 3. Notice how this has 3 levels. That's what this is right here. Okay, so if we change this to a 4, and there is a 4, I'm trying to see if I see one on my screen here. Let's see, put a 4 and we'll say apply, and there is a 4. There's several 4s on the long side. Notice I only changed the long side. This is a short, is still set to 3. The longs here have 4 levels of sequential decline. Okay, so you can specify both long and short. I'm going to change that back to a 3. I just wanted to show you that it will do different levels, and it'll show you in the signal bar. You do have an alert system here. You have a long sound. You can enable this to a wave file. Choose a wave file, and whatever the signal is a long signal, it's going to give you an alert. Okay, so that's all for the long setups on the reversal alert. Now the short setups are exactly the same, but in reverse. Okay, so the short color is this fire brick color here. You can highlight that and change it if you like using the pull down. The short position of the COT. Now remember, for a COT to get a short, the COT has got to be in the upper half of the bar. So again, I've got this set at 40%. And the sequential decline, how many levels are you looking for? We're looking for a minimum of 3, but you can also customize this and put in a 4. The short sound is exactly like the long sound, and you can enable it and choose an alert file. Remember that any .wave file can be substituted in here, and so you can make a custom wave file if you so choose. The calculation, now that that's all the setups for the long and short. Now the calculation here is defaulted to on bar close, and that means it is going to wait until the bar closes before it gives you a signal. So this bar will have started, as soon as it starts, you will get a signal, and it's going to give you the conditions at that exact point. If the conditions are met, then you'll get a signal. But it's going to wait until the candle is completely finished. Now, we can also choose it to be on real time. Now, if it's on real time, any time during the bar, so if this is a 5-minute bar, so if at minute 1 all the conditions are true, you're going to get a signal. And 2 minutes later, if the conditions are no longer met, the signal is going to go away. So when you're on real time, keep in mind that the data is updating real time and the conditions are being met in real time. So if the conditions stay, the signal will stay there until the bar closes. But if the conditions change, the signal may go away. It may even reverse if the conditions are favorable for a reversal. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to jump down to the font color. The font color here is white smoke. That is the color of the inside the signal. Okay, so we could change the font inside the signal to some other color. For instance, we could change this to, say, a green. And you can see the font color inside the signal. I don't think you would really want to do that, so we'll change that back to the white smoke. But the point is that you can change the color of the inside of the signal. Now we're going to move to the conditional number 3. So to get a signal, we have to have the sequential decline and we have to have the COT in the proper position. And we need condition number 3 to be true. So there are 4 conditions and you can turn them on. They are all independent of each other, so you can have multiples on. And if one is on, it does not negatively affect the other. Okay, but the condition overall has to be true. So if you have 2 of them turned on and one is false, that is going to, condition number 3 will be false. You understand? Hopefully you understand. If you have 2 and they're not both true, then the condition number 3 will be true. If one is false, condition number 3 is false. Okay, so you can link these, or you can have more than one turned on at a time, or just one. It doesn't make any difference. They all contribute to whether or not condition number 3 is true or not. Okay, the current bar rule. Okay, the current bar rule only allows a signal in the direction of the bar. Okay, so if we say this is true, let's see if we have some examples before we update. So this is a down bar and this is a short signal, so this one would qualify. So we'll say OK here, or apply, and it's only going to show us, see some of those longs. You can see the long, there's one long there. It's a green bar and it was an up signal. Okay, this is a down bar and it's a short signal. So that is conforming to condition number 3, which is that the current bar rule is set to true, and it is true. Okay, so it's on and it's true, so that's why we're getting the signal here. So this is a down bar, COT is in the correct position, and we have sequential decline. So the current bar rule, I'll repeat that one more time, the current bar rule is that it only allows a signal in the direction of the current bar. Oh, I'm going to turn that false now, and we're going to jump down to the HHLL rule. The HHLL rule, I love this name because it tells you exactly what it is in the name. The HH is higher high, and the LL is the lower low. So we need a higher high and a lower low in order to take this trade. All right, so let's turn this on and we'll see if that gives us. And it took away, you saw that it took away some of these shorts. And here's what we have here. So this is a long, so we have sequential decline. COT is in the bottom half of the candle, and it is a lower low. So the bar before, this was a low, and this is a lower low. So this met all three conditions, and it gave us a signal. Okay, that one's pretty easy. So lower low, long position, sequential decline, and the COT. So all three conditions were met. Obviously, on the short side, it would be a higher high. You'd have a higher high and then the signal. Okay, so the previous bar rule. Now, when I get finished with this, I'm going to have a summary that will show you and spell out the specific rules. So hopefully that will help you remember what these rules do. Now, the previous bar rule. The previous bar rule only gives you a long when the previous bar was down. Okay, so when the previous bar was down, you can get a long signal. When the previous bar is up, you can only get a short signal. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say true here, and let's see what happens. Okay, so in this case, we got the exact same signal here, but for a different reason. This one had a lower low, remember, before. Now, this is a down bar, so the previous bar was a down bar. Therefore, we can get a long trade. Okay, so it's possible that you could have that this could be all the way down here. Okay, this bar could come all the way down here, so you did not have a lower low, but it was still a down bar. So you had a down bar, and then this down bar, yes, we can go long, sequential decline, and COT in the correct position. Okay, so that is how that works. Okay, so now let's put this back on false. The last and final rule is the previous COT position. Okay, so it's going to look at the previous bar. All right, so the previous bar here, the COT position, where do I want it? Well, I want the COT position for a long trade to always be in the lower half of the bar. Okay, so if I say less than 50, so if I put a 50 in here, it's saying that it has to be in the lower half of the bar for me to take this long trade. So if I say, so this is not the case, because the COT here is in the top half of the bar. This is the previous COT. Okay, so this one here is going to go away when we put this filter or this condition on. So I'm going to say apply here, and you can see that it went away. Okay, because the COT in the previous bar was in the upper half instead of the lower half. If you have a 0 in here, it's the same as turning it off. Okay, so that is all of the parameters in the reversal alert. Now I'm going to briefly show you some slides to go over these rules one more time. So in summary, we're going to look at the rules one last time. This is in a slide so that I can make drawings and stuff on it, and it's not constantly adjusting when we make a change. So let me turn my pin on. Okay, so the current bar rule. It only gives a signal in the direction of the current bar. So you can see here, this is a down bar, and we have a short signal. Okay, so let's review one more time. We have sequential decline, shows you right there. We have it set for 3 levels. The COT is in the upper half of the bar, and it's a down bar, so we get a signal. So the higher high, lower low rule, you have to have a higher high when you're going short and a lower low when going long. Okay, so I've got a couple of examples here. So we've got let me turn my pin on again. Here's a low, here's a lower low. So that condition is true. We have sequential decline, and we have a COT in the lower half. Therefore, we get a long signal. Okay? This bar right here, here's the low, another low. So we've got lower low, we have sequential decline, and we have the COT in the lower half. So we are going to take this long signal. Higher high. Here's a high, here's a higher high. Sequential decline, COT. We get a short signal. This one right here. This is the high, higher high, sequential decline, COT in the upper half. We have a short signal. Okay? I know this is redundant, but I want to make sure that you can spot these rules and how these signals are generated. It's very, very important when you're doing this in real time. Previous bar rule. For short positions, the previous bar must be up. That's for short. For long, the previous bar must be down. Okay, so let's look at this signal right here. This is a long signal. So for a long, the previous bar must be down. So this is a down bar. So we have down bar, previous position. So this previous rule bar is true. We have sequential decline. We have the COT in the bottom half. We get a signal. Okay? You have to have the previous bar be up. So this bar is up. So that is true. We have sequential decline, and we have COT in the upper half for a short signal. It's very simple, very straightforward. Previous bar rule. Previous bar COT rule. Previous bar COT rule, you set the COT position for the previous bar requirement. Okay, remember we set that. We want it to be 50 or less. 50 or less. So that means that the previous bar, so let's look at this long. So we want to take a long trade, or we're looking for a long signal. The COT needs to be in the bottom, right there, the bottom 50%. So here's about 50%. Yes, it's in the bottom. So condition 3 is true. Do we have sequential decline? Yes, we do, right there. And you can see that in the signal, obviously. So we have sequential decline, and the COT is in the bottom 50%. So condition 1, sequential decline. Condition 2, position of the COT. And condition 3, the previous bar's COT position. Okay, we'll do a short trade here. So we're looking for a short. What needs to happen? The previous bar, the COT needs to be in the upper 50%, and it is. Okay, so that's condition 3. Is condition 1 true? Do we have sequential decline? Yes, we do. Do we have the COT in the upper 50%, or upper half of the bar? Yes, we do. So we get a short signal. And those are the 4 rules. I know this is really going to help you in your trading. Have a great day.